The man is an idiot. Nevertheless, after questioning both candidates, the interviewer declares, "Your credentials are so darn equal, and I don't know how to decide. I can't make up my mind." The male candidate proposes that the matter be settled by arm wrestling. The interviewer agrees. Then the man pins down the woman's arm, thereby winning the job. Scene. Peter Ackroyd, Danny's little brother, and a gifted comic performer in his own right, played the interviewer. Catherine O'Hara was the female candidate. John Candy had played my part, the male candidate, in a brilliantly John way, as a bashful, nervous, sweet-faced soul who was heartbreakingly aware of how out of his depth he was. In other words, as a guy who could be in that situation in real life. I knew I couldn't replicate that. Only a fool would try to replicate anything that John did, so I decided to go in a broader, more pop art direction. First, my character would talk funny. I took his unusual timbre from my sister Nora's husband Ralph, who spoke in a kind of resigned, sleepy voice. Then I added a Canadian tick that's not unlike Valley Girl upspeak, wherein even declarative sentences end like questions. In high school, I had a geeky friend named Patrick who talked this way. He was an amateur photographer. I'd ask him, "Patrick, what'd you do this weekend?" He'd say, "I took a lot of slides." I'd respond, "Really? Did you develop them?" And he'd say, "No, I didn't feel I had to develop them, 'cause, I took them, so I know what they are in my mind." You could almost chart out the notes of his speech musically on staff paper. I couldn't help but make a mental note of Patrick's speech patterns. I thought, I must remember this, for someday I just might make millions off it. For the character's wardrobe, I unearthed an old shirt from my teen years with a dated rusting gray checked pattern. I buttoned it up to my neck and hitched up my trousers high above my navel. Ed, as I decided to call my underqualified idiot job candidate, was complete. Well, maybe not quite. I decided to apply some grease to the front of my hair so it stuck up a little to make Ed's physical appearance more awkward still. The audience, thank God, seemed to like Ed from the outset. Catherine, as prim job applicant Barbara O'Leary, confidently rattled off to the interviewer all the degrees that she held: a Bachelor of Mathematics from McGill, a Master's in Business Administration from Columbia, and so on. As she did so, Ed, in full view of the audience, would register increasing panic, his smile turning into a grimace, his breaths deepening, his eyes cast downward, his whole body palpitating. This silent meltdown always got a big laugh, the biggest in the sketch, which was an utter revelation to me. Part of my trepidation about improvisational comedy was that I thought I would have to come up with funny lines all the time, on the spot. What I discovered, through Ed, was that I simply needed to commit, to not worry about jokes. The reaction seemed to get the biggest laughs, not the action. I didn't need to be a stand-up comedian delivering punchlines. If I just sincerely devoted myself to Ed's panic with every fiber of my being, the audience would commit to him. The deeper I got into my first season with Second City, the more confident I became about pushing Ed further. One day, backstage, Peter Ackroyd remarked, "Boy, Marty, that hair is standing taller every time you do that scene." He was right. I was putting more and more grease into it. So to make Peter laugh, I pushed my forelock straight up into a point, like a unicorn's horn, and left it that way. When we did Sexes that night, my entrance drew its biggest laugh yet. Well, I thought, isn't that what we're trying to achieve here? Thus, forevermore, did Ed have pointy hair. 4 years earlier, when Second City first set up shop in Toronto, I couldn't bring myself to audition. I was afraid to. The improvisational troupe and theater had been a going concern in Chicago since 1959, and its decision to open a branch in Canada was like an answered prayer to most of my friends. Many of them were castmates from the musical Godspell, whose Toronto production, mounted in 1972, included such then unknowns as Eugene Levy, Andrea Martin, Dave Thomas, Victor Garber, Gilda Radner, and me. For all of us, along with the show's musical director Paul Schaefer, Godspell was our big break, our first serious professional job in show business. We were a tight, rowdy little band of long hairs, and Gilda and I became romantically involved as well. Gilda and Eugene, along with 2 other friends I'd made in Toronto, Danny Ackroyd